Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the She.Must.Knit podcast. My name is Erin and thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. I hope you guys had a great week. We had a really nice week. It was very busy, but it was very nice. I believe last episode I was talking about how I was preparing for the Sunshine Fiber Fest that was going to happen in Aurelia the very next day, and I did. I went. It was a lovely show. I totally plan on participating again next year if I can. And then the very next day on the Sunday, Avery had her first communion, and I'll pop a picture in here if I can. But it was lovely. It was very small. We didn't have a lot of family. It was just like, my mom and then her godparents, but it was a lovely day. We went out for brunch, and yeah, she was very excited to finally have that ceremony come because we have been preparing for it all year with all the different little meetings and little retreats that they've been doing for them. So she was very, very happy. And then the rest of the week, I have just been getting ready for my trunk show that I have tomorrow at the Knitting Basket with Angie. Hi, Angie. I can't wait to come and see you again. And it's going to be a really nice show and to see everybody else who is going to be there. So that has been my week so far. If you're interested in a weather report, while it is definitely, technically spring right now, this week has just been, it's been cold and it's been rainy and it's gray, and I say that as the sun seems to be peeking out today. Even today has been really cold. But yeah, it's just, we had yesterday, it was raining all day. And it just seems like that warm weather that we've been waiting for is just taking its sweet time to get here. And then the other thing was the construction started up again. I was all set to record this morning like I usually do, and we woke up to the most awful sound. They were doing something at our next door neighbor's property at the front there. I think they're preparing for like the water lines that they're going to be putting in or something. The noise was absolutely awful. So I was just like, okay, there's no way that I'm going to be recording with that going on. And so I decided to wait. Now it is much later in the day. Avery is home from school. She's upstairs busying herself with whatever she busies herself with. And there is still some construction going on, but it is across the street and it's much farther back from the street. So you may hear the occasional rumble of an excavator, but I don't think it's too bad. I honestly don't think you're really going to notice it. So I just decided to do it now. Let's just do it now, because if I wait for Dennis to get home, who knows when I'm going to be able to sit down, and hopefully I'll be able to get this done so that I can get dinner all started and ready, and yeah, so when he gets home there's dinner ready. So what do I have for you today? I have a finished project. I have progress on 2 of the projects that I have been sharing with you. I have a new cast on. I know, naughty, but I just had to do it, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And then, yeah, this is a chat week. So normally, if you're a new viewer, I have 1 week where I do a collection that you guys vote on, and then the next week is kind of a chat week that I just kind of talk about whatever topic I want, or a topic that you guys suggest that you'd like me to talk about. So this is a chat week, and I've decided to give you a little bit of an update on how my year-long low buy household whole thing has been going. The last time I gave you an update, it was at the end of February, and there's been some interesting developments with this year-long challenge. So I thought this would be a good week to chat about how that is going. But let's get started. I'm going to have a quick sip of my coffee, and it is the vanilla hazelnut one again. I am really enjoying this. I would repurchase it, and it's convenient that it's at the market right down the street. And then we are going to start right into the finished project. So last week I showed you these, and I had finished the first one and I was working on the second one, and I was hoping I would get a good amount of work done possibly at the show, and I did. So these are my sample socks. These are made with my own yarn, and I sell these deluxe sock sets at my shows and on my site, and I really wanted to have a pair of socks done as a sample so that people could kind of see what you could do with the main skein and the minis, and then also what size of socks you could get out of the yarn provided. So I decided to use the contrasts in reverse on each sock. I think that looks really cute. And then I did use up the entire 50-gram skein. So I pretty much had a few yards left of that. But with the contrasts, I had over 10 grams on one and almost 15 on the other. So there is the potential to make either the cuffs longer. There is the potential to add a little bit of length with the contrasts. But yeah, this is how much, like I use the whole 50 gram skein. Just for reference, I have about a size women's 8.5 foot, and I do like to make the legs of my socks quite a bit bigger, so that would have taken extra yarn as well. If you have smaller feet or narrower legs, you could probably get a larger sock out of these sets. So these I just did in a vanilla pattern. I cast on from the top 80 stitches. I like to do a 2x1 rib for about 25 rounds, and then I went into the leg. I like to do it so the leg is around 5 or 6 inches. I put in a German short row heel. After I join back in the round after the heel, I start to decrease my stitches down to 70 stitches, and then I keep that 70 stitch count for the rest of the foot, and then I just pop in a toe. So yeah, these went pretty fast. I think last week I showed you I was on the second sock and I just started the ribbing, and I got a fair bit done of this sock at the show. The morning was a little slower. In the afternoon it picked up, and then later in the afternoon it slowed down a little bit. I almost got to the heel. I was about maybe 10 rounds away from starting the heel, so I think that was pretty good. And then over the rest of the weekend, I think Monday is when I was Kitchenering the toe. So these socks are now ready for me to bring to the other shows that I'm doing. I can hang them up with my sock set so people can see them. And yeah, I think what I've decided to do, because I was like, okay, if these are samples, you know, eventually I'd really like to wear them. That's the whole point of making them, so that they fit my feet. So I think my plan is these are going to be the samples for the rest of the shows for the year. My last show tends to be the Kitchener-Waterloo show in September. And then come next year, what I'll do is I'll develop a new colorway at the beginning of the year, and that will give me lots of time to knit up a pair of sample socks, and then that will be kind of my 2020 year color, and that color will be available at all my shows next year, and then that one will be retired and so forth. So come January, I will be able to enjoy these socks. So yeah, that is my finished object. The next thing I have to share with you, I think, is going to be the progress on my May Desert Vista Dyeworks socks. So when I showed these to you last week, I believe I just had the cuff done. I think I was through at least one color repeat, and I was saying how I wasn't sure which direction I was going to go, if I was going to do a plain sock. I know I wasn't going to look through my pattern library and pick out a pattern, but I was thinking of maybe incorporating a stitch pattern or something like that, and that is what I have decided to do. So I have made pretty good progress on these, considering I have incorporated a pattern, and it is a pattern that I have to refer to. It is not one that I can easily memorize and just work on. I do have to refer to some instructions. So this is what I have so far. So this colorway is called Soul Train, and I love how this is knitting up. I did a nice long rib. Again, I started with 80 stitches, and I did my 2x1 rib. I think I did, yeah, the rib goes all the way down here, so I definitely did more than 25 rounds for the rib. But then I decided to incorporate just this very simple, there are cable stitches involved, but it's kind of like these two rows just kind of travel along and intertwine, and I thought that would be a really cool detail. Originally I was thinking of just finding something like this and doing it along the back of the sock, because I wanted to do the heel that I've been doing over the last couple of months, where you start increasing and create like a triangular shaped heel, and then you do decreases to bring it back to your foot circumference. And I thought it might be neat to put something like this on the back, so that when I start increasing for the heel, it kind of happens in the middle of this stitch design. But once I started doing it, I was like, you know what, it might be really fun to have it going along the front too, so that this design will go along the entire front of the sock, and then it is also on the back where it will kind of split and get bigger and bigger. So I found this design in one of the books that I have in my library. So it's this one right here. It's just 400 knitted stitches. I have a couple of stitch books. I don't have a ton. This is the first one I looked through, and I found what I was looking for. So they call it the large raised chain, and you can see it there. And the one on the other page is actually quite similar, but it's got a like a garter kind of background, the purl bumps, whereas this one has the stockinette background, which I liked better because this I'm not doing a whole sock in purl stitches. No. So this is what I've been following, and then I've kind of made some tweaks to make it fit in with the sock construction, and then I've had to basically write it out. So this I'll get back to this when I talk about my new cast on. But I've made my little notes and how I need to follow this to incorporate the sock shaping and the heel shaping. And one of the things I want to do on the back, I think, yeah, this is it here, is because once I start increasing for the heel, you're going to lose this kind of definition there. And so I've started incorporating some little twists so that this edge will kind of remain consistent along the back of the heel. So yeah, there's just a whole bunch of little details that I've had to write down and when I need to do it. And it's not hard once I'm following it, but it's not something that I can just take with me everywhere. And we will get back to that. So I am making pretty good progress on these. I do feel like these are going to be a little bit slower than if I was just doing a vanilla sock, or if I was following a pattern with a stitch pattern that was very easy to memorize, like some of the ones I've done over the past months. But I really like the effect and how it's working up, so I am going to push on, and hopefully I will still be able to finish it by the end of the month. I should be able to, because my workload, while it still is remaining consistent, because I do have some shows coming up, they're not coming up like right around the corner. I have several weeks to prepare for them, so I still think I should be able to get these done, even with all the added stitch paying attention and all that. So before I get to my new cast on, I'm going to quickly share with you the other project that you have already seen, and it is my Cumulus Blouse. So this one I am working on out of some yarn that I got from my dad as a gift. It's very, I still think it's a little bit thicker than lace weight, but it's definitely finer than fingering. So I'm holding this double, and I am still really enjoying it. This is actually kind of like my vanilla project right now, because I'm still just where the raglan increases are happening, but it's fairly straightforward. I don't need to look at the pattern for this until I get to the amount of stitches that you need in each section. So this is how it is knitting up. My little skateboarding turtle is where I was last week. So you can see I've made a bit of progress, not a ton, but I have been working on this in the evenings, and when I want something that I don't have to really look at the pattern, that's what I've been going for. And so I'm hoping to have a bit more progress on this the next time I show you. I will say though, this project has become the new unicorn, and if you have watched for many months, you will know what I'm talking about. And this unicorn right there, if you are a new viewer, when I made that unicorn, there was something about the yarn that my cat, Mr. T, just was obsessed with, and I had to constantly hide my project because he would go into my bag and he would steal the yarn, he would steal the pieces that I was working on, and he would run off with them. And I'm finding that this sweater, there is something about this yarn. It's supposed to be cashmere. I don't know if it's a blend or what, but he just will not leave this alone. If I have it out in the open at all, he is going for it. He is trying to snatch it and run off with it into his little hidey hole, wherever that is. So I have to keep this on a high shelf. If I am not working on it, I have to put it where he can't get it, because he will try and get it. But yeah, so that's my progress on that so far. I cannot wait until I get to where I'm done the increases and I can join the neck together and start working in the round. I am working on this pattern for the cowl that is going along in the Bling Your String group. It is the Breezy Arms Make Along. I haven't talked about it in a while because I haven't been working on anything that fits into it, so I just keep forgetting to mention it. But it is going on all the way through the summer. I forget if I said September or October. I'm going to have to check the thread. But basically, it's any garment, adult down to baby size, that just shows part of your arms. And sewing is included, knitting is included, crocheting is included. As long as you are working on a garment that shows at least part of your arms, it can fit into this make-along. And the reason that this fits, even though it's a sweater, is that I will be probably making it 3/4 length sleeves. So I think the pattern shows it full sleeves, but I don't like full sleeves. It is going to be 3/4 length, so it will fit into that cowl whenever I get it done. But yeah, so I worked on that, and then the final thing that I worked on this week was my new cast on. So going back to my May Desert Vista Dyeworks socks, and just again, it's not a hard pattern that I'm doing, but it is more complex than just vanilla. And I had the thought this week, I have the trunk show at Angie's, and I know there's usually a little time to knit during that, and that if I had to bring Avery to any of her kind of activities, there's usually opportunities to knit there. And it struck me that these socks were not going to work for on-the-go mindless knitting. And I was like, no, what would I bring if I needed to bring knitting somewhere? Everything I'm working on is, kind of complicated. Like, I probably could bring the sweater, but only to a certain point. So I decided to cast on another pair of socks. And one of the goals on my bingo card, as well as one of my mini goals for this month, is to start a pair. So my goal on my bingo card is to do a pair of sport weight socks. And my mini goal for this month is just to cast those on. So I thought that would be the perfect project to start. Let's cast on some sport weight socks and get that going. Of course, though, when I looked through my patterns, because I was like, oh, well, maybe I can find a pattern that's in my library, because that's another one of my bingo goals, is to use patterns that I already have. And of course, I did find a pattern, but it's not as vanilla as, I thought it would be, but it's okay. It'll be fine. So I looked through my library on Ravelry to see if I had any sport weight socks already in my library, and I did. There was a pattern in this magazine here. It's the Interweave Holiday Knits from like 2007, and they had a really pretty pair of sport weight socks. So I'll just show you right there. And I thought, great, that will work, even if it's just to get going on the stitch count, and if I need to do any little modifications. But I did think it's cute. I am going to make them longer. They're written just to be like little anklet socks. The reason that I want a pair of sport weight socks is in the dead of winter, when it's super, super cold, I want to be able to layer them over my regular hand knit socks. So I don't really want ankle socks. Like, I want longer length socks. So that's one change that I'm going to be doing. The other change that I had to do, and this was more just for fit, not necessarily how the pattern looks, is that I had to increase the stitch size, because the pattern as written only came in one size for an 8-inch circumference. And as I've mentioned, I like the fit around my calves to be nice and loose and comfortable, and then I usually decrease down for the foot. So I did get these started, and this is the yarn here. This is, again, one of my yarns. I don't knit with my yarns very often, but this one was because I got in an order of some sport weight non-superwash yarn. So it's merino wool and nylon, but it's not washable, and it is the softest stuff ever. So I dyed up a bunch of these, and I think I still have some, but I did sell a lot of them. And this is one of the colorways I did. It was like, I called it Rainbow Pop, and I just thought it was really, really pretty. And I put this aside after I dyed it, because I was like, I really want some socks in this yarn. So I have finally cast on some socks, and it is super, super soft, and I really like how it's knitting up. So this is what I have so far. And I did have to modify the pattern slightly to increase the stitch count. But I found that it was really easy to do with this pattern, because there is this really large section here of just plain knitting. So when I was trying to figure out where I was going to put those extra stitches, like I felt so dumb, because all of a sudden it was just like, well, duh, just add them in here. That way I can still follow the charts for the cable portion on either side. I just knit more stitches in the middle than they show in the chart. So that's worked out perfectly. The other change, because I prefer a 2x1 rib for the cuff, but I did a 2x2 just so that it would flow into the pattern nicely. And yeah, I'm working my way down. So I think this is a really, really pretty like cable pattern. There are cable stitches, but there's also a lot of slip stitches in there as well, which is how you get kind of these extended stitches. And it is a 4-row repeat. So while this isn't a vanilla sock, it's not too bad. I think I can still bring this with me and knit with it without looking at the pattern, as long as I complete a 4-row section before I put it down. So I don't find it as easy to see where I am in the pattern, just like if I just put it down and then pick it back up, unless I'm at the end of the 4-row pattern repeat, it takes me a minute to figure out where I am. So, but because it's only 4 rows, I find it's pretty easy. Like most times if I'm sitting down to knit, I have enough time to do at least those 4 rows. And then if I know I need to put it down, I make sure that I finish the 4 rows before I put it down, so that when I come back to it, I know exactly where I am in the pattern. So yeah, I've got this much done, and I like how it looks. I like how it's knitting up. I'm doing these on 2.5 needles. Usually I do my socks on 2mm needles because I do like a denser fabric. I do like how this fabric is knitting up, even though I know there's a lot of people who make their regular socks with fingering yarn on 2.5s. Yeah, I like a denser fabric. So I'm happy with how these are working up. I'm happy with the pattern so far. It works towards 2 of my bingo goals, both the sport weight socks and using patterns from my library. And then also my May DVD, I've decided to count that for that goal as well, because even though the book I'm using isn't like a full written out pattern, I am still using a resource that I already purchased and that was already in my library to make these socks. So I am counting that towards one of those patterns as well. Yeah, I think actually everything I'm working on right now works towards my bingo goals in some way, so that is awesome. So that is all the knitting that I have been working on this week. I'm hoping that will increase once I get the trunk show done. I think there's about 3 weeks before I will be at the Kawartha show, and then I think there's another trunk show in there, and then everything gets a little bit more spaced out from here on in. So I feel like my knitting time is going to get a little bit back to normal. So the last thing I have to talk about this episode is just how my low buy is going. So I apologize if there's a bit of an awkward jump there. I know I was in the middle of talking about my year-long low buy and just an update on how things have been going since the last time I talked about it. And then Dennis walked through the door. How rude. And I had to, go about and get dinner going and, do the family stuff that, we need to do. So it's quite a bit later now. I completely forget where I was. I'm not even going to try and splice something together. So yeah, we're just going to start over at the beginning. So basically what I am going to be talking about is, first I'm going to give you a very tiny recap about last year's challenge and this year's challenge, just in case there's any new viewers, and then I'm going to talk about a few ways where I've noticed my way of thinking about shopping and stuff like that has changed, and then I'm going to go into a few things that I have learned over the last 2 months or so, and then how I'm going to change my rules a little bit going forward to make them work a little bit better for where I think I am at this point. So, teeny tiny recap. Basically, last year I gave myself a yarn challenge, a stash challenge over the year to kind of curb impulse purchases, mainly online stuff, because I would buy a lot of online purchases very impulsively. So I gave myself some rules where I could buy, certain things at shows, I could buy something for my birthday, but otherwise I was pretty restrictive. And I found over the course of the year that it really changed how I looked at buying yarn, and it has carried over into this year. Even though I can freely buy yarn now, I just don't want to. I'm very happy with my stash where it is. I've been very happy using it. I've been finding it very motivational and very rewarding to use what I have. And at the beginning of the year, I decided I kind of wanted that mentality to carry over into our household in general, just like in life in general. And so for this year, I'm challenging myself to a year-long low buy. I really want to concentrate on using what I have, making better use of the space in our house. I tend to have, 15 of one thing that just kind of builds up over time. Like, you know, if you get things on sale, and you're like, oh, I'll grab a few, and then that stuff just kind of builds up, and then all of a sudden you have a whole closet full of things, right? So I've just been wanting to use our things better, use our space better, and so that's what this year is all about. And at the beginning of the year, I kind of gave myself a budget and a few rules. Now, if you really want a bit more detail about last year's challenge and how I felt about that, I would go to see episode 42. I talk about it at the end there. And then if you want to see my last update and some of the things that I was talking about and some of the challenges I was feeling, episode 48 is where you want to go. And if I'm really, really fancy, I see sometimes some channels will like link things so they pop up like, you know, right in the corner. I will try and do that, but if not, then I'll just have those episodes linked below in case you want to kind of recap and catch up and see how I got to the way I am thinking right now. So anyway, back in the last episode, in episode 48, it was about 2 months in, so I think it was around the beginning of March that I did that, and I was really struggling with the budget. I think February's month, I went over budget, and so I was feeling like I should be disappointed that I went over budget, but then when I looked at what I bought, it was all very thoughtful purchases, so in that way, I felt like I had improved. So I was really struggling with, you know, just how that was working out. And so it's been another couple of months, and I've really noticed some changes taking place. Nothing that is like ingrained, so it's not like with the yarn where now I can go to a show and I'm just not interested in buying yarn unless I'm specifically looking for something. I'm not quite there yet, but like I'll go into a store now with the intention of getting something and I'll walk out without buying anything. And usually that wouldn't happen. If I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to pick this up, you know, we need it or I want it and I have the money, you know, I would just go and I'd get it. And I found there's been a couple of times now where I'll go in and I'm looking for something. I've told myself I can get this thing. And I've just walked out thinking, you know what, I don't need it right now. I don't need it at this exact moment. And that is a completely new shift in thinking. So that's exciting. Some of the other things I have found that have changed are just being more resourceful with what I have. So an example of that, there was several months ago, I was reorganizing our big chest freezer in the basement, and I was thinking what would really make it easier for me to, you know, separate my fruits and my vegetables and my meats and my whatever is if I had some bins. And my first thought was like, okay, you know what, tomorrow I'll go over to Walmart, I'll go over to the dollar store, and I'll see if I can find some bins that will fit in the freezer. But then thinking about it, if you remember, I was reorganizing my stash in my studio room here. And one of my goals was to condense my stash over in the corner. And all my stash in that corner was in bins. And I did condense it. And I had a bunch of empty bins. And I was like, why aren't you just using those bins? They didn't fit perfectly in the freezer, but they fit well enough that they do what I need them to do. So I was able to use things that I already had. Another example is I've been trying to go through all our things and just donate stuff that we're not going to use. And there was one day that I went through one of my old jewelry boxes, like my costume jewelry, and I was just picking out things that I knew I was not going to use anymore and that, you know, I didn't need taking up space. And I came across these earrings. I really like these earrings. Now, the reason why this was something that was resourceful is I bought these years and years and years and years and years and years ago off the shopping channel. It was a total impulse purchase. It was from like some Joan Rivers line. I never wore them because they were bright gold. So I really liked the design of them and I loved this blue stone, but they were completely like bright gold plated. And I never wore them. And so I was going through my jewelry box and I was just like, oh, I really love how these earrings look, but I've never worn them. And I just don't tend to wear gold jewelry. And I was all set to put them in the donate pile when I was like, is there something I could do to them to make them so that I would enjoy them and that I could use them, because I did spend money on them. I use some black nail polish to cover up the gold and I wear them all the time now. So there's just been little things like that where I've changed how I've thought about things, and it's been really nice just using what I have and not having that first thought to be like, okay, well, I'll just go out and buy something. You know, oh, I need some earrings, I'll just go out and buy some earrings. No, I had some that I really liked. I just had to make one tiny little change. So the final thing that I wanted to talk about is just some of the things that I've learned over these last 2 months and just how that relate to how my thinking is changing. And one of them is that wanting things is okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting things. And what I have found really helpful is to have either, if there's certain websites that I like to browse on, is I like when they have the kind of favorite feature that you can favorite things, or I've created a little bookmark tab on my browser specifically for things that I want to remember, because a lot of the time what will happen is someone will mention something and I'll be like, oh, that's really cool, and you go check it out, and then the old me would buy it. So I'd be like, oh, that looks really cool. I'd read the description. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like awesome. And I'd buy it. And now what I'm trying to do is I'll go check it out. That's fine. And I'll be like, oh, that looks really neat. But then I'll either add it to that kind of bookmark bar, or if it's on a website that I have a favorites list, I'll add it to that favorites list. And just by doing that, it's almost like that is enough. Like, it's enough to acknowledge the fact that I like this item and I have somehow saved it so it's not going to get forgotten in, you know, the great ether of the internet. And then when I come back to it, sometimes I'll go back to it and I'll look at that list, and there might be some things where I'm like, okay, no, I really still am interested in that, and the next time I run out of X, that's something I want to look at. Or I'll see it and I'll be like, well, why the heck did I want that? That's not going to be useful for me, and I can delete it. So it's a way, like I said, it's okay to want things, but I'm finding it really helpful to just kind of put a pin in it, right, and get back to it. I also have a notebook that anytime I'm interested in trying something, or I hear of something that is of interest to me, I'll write it down. And again, I'll go through that list, and a lot of times I'll be like, why did I want that? And I'll just cross it off. Or if I keep thinking about it multiple times, then when I'm in need of that kind of item, I know that's something that originally piqued my interest, and that's something I could look at. So yeah, I've learned that it's okay to want things. It's just, you don't need to act on it right away. You can just kind of put a pin in it and come back to it later. Another thing that I've learned in the process of trying to use things up, I think in the last update I said how I had organized all my things into like groups. So I put all my hand soaps together in one closet in my main bathroom. I put all my skincares together, so all my moisturizers are together, all my serums are together, all my cleansers are together, so that as I use things, I know what I have left and I know when I've completely run out of something. And in doing that, I have learned that it takes forever. Like, even something that you think would be like a small bottle, it takes forever to actually use a product. And by doing that, I think that's what's helped if I go out and I'm looking at items, is, do I really want to bring this home? Because basically I'm committing to like 6-8 months of using this thing. Do I really want to be using this one thing for like forever? Because things last forever, oh my goodness. And so that has really helped. And I have started tracking things. One of the things that I'm doing now is when I open up a new product, I have Sharpie markers everywhere. And I've just been writing the date of when I open it, so that I know when I use it up, I can really see how long it took to use up that thing. Because knowing that it takes that amount of time to use up one little product really makes you think when you're out and about and things are on sale, if you need them. Like the hand soap, I finally have used up one of my hand soaps, and it's the one at the kitchen sink, so I use that one the most, and it took me 2 months. So one of the Bath and Body Works foaming soaps, it took me 2 months to go through that with regular use. So going back to like when they had those sales, and you want to buy like 10, 15 soaps, that's going to last forever. So you know what, you probably don't need that many at one time. And I still have so many in the house to look through. So I have learned that things last forever, and that you really need to think before bringing something in if you really want to commit to using that thing for that long of time. And kind of rolling into that is also, don't buy backups. Don't buy backups. I remember at the beginning of the year, there was a couple of products that I really liked. at the time I was like, oh, I really, really like this. And then I had been out and I had seen that it was either on clearance, it was marked down, it was being discontinued, something like that. And I was like, ooh, I should pick up another one while it's on sale because I really like that product. But I didn't because I didn't need it and I still had it. Coming now, I'm still, like, that was at the beginning of the year. One of those products I am still using. I probably have about a third left. And at this point, I'm like, I don't want another one. Like, when this is done, I want to move on, and you know, my preferences have changed. I want to try something else. And if I had bought that other one because I was worried about not missing out, I'd be stuck using that one for another like 8 months. So you don't need backups unless it's something that you absolutely have been using for years and you know that this is your item. Like for me, it's my vitamin E oil that I use for taking off my eye makeup. I have been using that for years, and I would stock up on that if I could, because that's something I will just continue to use. I don't get tired of it. It serves a purpose, and if I could get a bunch of them, I would. But I still have, like, I have the one I'm using, and then I have an extra one because I did buy backups. But that's something that I would buy backups of. But generally, there's been several things that I've been thinking, like, previously as, like, oh, I should buy another one before they discontinue it or while it's on sale. And I'm still using the original one, and at this point, I would not repurchase it. So I'm so glad that I did not. And so that brings us into my new plan. And I think I mentioned this with other challenges that I've done, that anytime you are going to try and make a change, it's going to take time, and it's okay that it might feel hard. And I'm finding now that I'm reaching a point where the previous rules that I set for myself in terms of the budget is no longer in line with how I'm feeling. So before, I needed the budget because I would just buy things that I liked, and that budget kind of kept that down. But because I've kind of changed how I thought about it, I'm not really impulsively buying things. I'm not really interested. I can go into a store and not feel the need to get something. I'm going to change it slightly. And I was inspired by a YouTube channel that I found called Kate's Fab Finds. And I just found her this year, but last year she did kind of a year-long challenge for herself, where every month she gave herself a challenge to simplify her life, and she did that challenge for each month. This year, she's kind of been talking about also the whole like shopping thing and just impulsive shopping. And so for this year, she's given herself the challenge of 5 things. So she can get 5 things every month, and I think she's mainly focusing on like clothing and shoes and accessories. And by doing that, she's really focusing on bringing things into the house that she truly, truly loves. So in her case, I believe she'll just buy anything that might intrigue her or interest her over the course of the month, but then by the end of the month, she can only keep 5. So that means that she might end up returning things. I don't tend to return things very much. So I like the idea of just, you know, instead of giving myself a monthly budget to spend, is having it not so much about the budget, but about bringing, if I'm going to purchase anything, to really make sure it's a thoughtful purchase that I want to have in my life and that has value in my life. So I like the idea of the 5 things, but I'd rather every time I go to purchase something really think about that one item versus getting multiple items and then having to return items. So that's not to say by the end of the month that I wouldn't return something, but I'd really like it to be more of a focused, thoughtful purchase each time. And actually, this month I did return something, and that is very unusual for me. I bought a top, I think last week, at Walmart, and I did try it on, and I liked it well enough. But see, that's the key too. Like, I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it. But I thought it might look cute with something that I already had at home, so I bought it home, tried it on, and it didn't look the way that I pictured it in my head with that item. And I know beforehand I would have just been like, oh, it's fine, I'll make it work, and I would have kept it. And this time I was like, you know what? No, it's not doing what I want. It doesn't look the way I want it to look. I'm not going to love it. It's probably going to hang up in my closet and never be touched. So I brought it back. So even that's a change too, right? So that's going to be my new challenge going forward, is just to really think about what I am purchasing and try and have 5 things. So at the end of the month, 5 things, it could be less than that, but no more than that, 5 things that I truly, truly love. In addition to that, I am going to allow myself one online purchase, because sometimes if I am buying something online, I'm not, especially if I'm paying for like shipping from another country or something, I'm not just going to order like one thing. It's going to be several things. So I can have one online purchase and then 5 like in-store purchases every month, with the goal being that is just more focused and more thoughtful, and bringing things into the house that I truly am going to love. So this doesn't include necessities. So if like Avery needs, like recently she needed new boots, that doesn't have to come out of my 5 things. But like if it's something that I don't need, and there is, there's something, either we have something that will work for that, or it's not a necessity. I need to think about it a little bit more, because I'm only going to be trying to buy 5 things. So that is how things have changed a little bit. That's how my rules have changed. I really like how my thought process has changed a little bit. If you guys, I know some of you have been doing your own little challenges over the year just to change some habits. I'd love to know how your process and how your own personal challenge is going. Yeah, and if there's anything else that you want to know, just let me know in the comments below. And yeah, I can talk about it on another chat week. So I believe that is it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you have a very crafty weekend, and I will talk to you soon.